give Carol a second to get this going. Is it working? Okay. It was being stubborn. So, hi everybody. I'm going to be a little bit redundant for the people that might be watching. My name's Karma, otherwise known as Kitten Karma. I have been at Big Cat Rescue since 2014, and I've had probably cumulative about 15 years of veterinary assistant technician experience, as well as worked in shelters, volunteered in shelters, and veterinary offices. So we're going to be talking about kitten diseases, shelters, and their medicine.
Could somebody pull that light off, please?
So the first one is URI, or upper respiratory disease. It is very contagious. It is transmitted through saliva and mucus from the nose and eyes. Infected cats can become carriers, and stress can exacerbate. So sometimes if you're wondering why kittens break with this shortly after their first day in the cabana, it's not necessarily germs in the cabana. It's a new stressful environment, and little kittens' immune systems are rather compromised in the first place, even though they've had their vaccines. Especially if they got separated from mom too early, they don't have the benefit of mom's milk. Some of the symptoms: mucus from eyes and nose, congestion, and sneezing. Prevention includes vaccines, separating ill cats from healthy ones, keep feeding and litter areas clean. Panleukopenia. It is the leading cause of death in kittens. It is often called distemper, but no relation. It's more closely related to parvo, so it's basically the feline version of parvovirus. Spread by direct contact with infected animal and secretions. It's a 90% mortality, so it is really deadly. Survives in carpets, cracks, and furnishings for over a year. It is resistant to ordinary household disinfectants, and vaccines are the best prevention. We did wind up actually with a bobcat kitten a couple years ago that wound up diagnosed with panleuk, and I had to go to the Humane Society and get a special cleaner to eradicate that. It's not just bleach that'll take care of that. Panleukopenia symptoms: it attacks the white blood cells, so they will get pale gums. Loss of appetite, crouching and pain, vomiting, yellow diarrhea, and hanging head over water dish, or just a sudden drop in energy. It can come on very quick. It can be, we had one kitten that happened to, I happened to be taking care of it. I was an intern at the time. Fed him, was doing great, ate, kind of slowed down, wasn't playing as much with his brothers and sisters, went to use the litter box and literally tipped over and fell. So it happens, it can happen that quickly. FELV, or feline leukemia virus. It kills 85% of infected cats within 3 years of diagnosis. However, it only lives a few hours outside of the body. It is contracted through saliva, blood, and feces. Kittens can contract in utero or from mom's milk. They can get it from healthy-looking cats. There is no cure, and vaccine is available, but there's still risk of getting it. And out of all the vaccines, that's probably the worst one, the most common one, where they've gotten sarcomas from, and it can also make your cat sick. Generally, the FELV vaccine is only given to cats that are going to be going outside. Best FELV prevention: keep your cat indoors. One more interesting FELV fact: feline leukemia has also threatened endangered panthers. FIV, or feline immunodeficiency virus. It attacks the immune system. Cats can live with the virus for a number of years. It's transmitted mainly through deep bite wounds. It primarily affects outdoor male cats. There is no vaccine or cure, and the best preventions are keeping your cats indoors and neutering your male cat. And these are examples of what positive SNAP tests look like. The FELV, if you're looking at it the other way, it's leukemia left. The poor cat in the middle has positive for both, and then the other one is FIV. We don't want to see those when I do the SNAP tests.
Would you see anything at all when you do the SNAP test? Is it just blank?
So if it's not, let me go back. The dot in the bottom, There at the top, I guess, from what you're looking at, that is the control dot, and that should pop up first. That means the test is working, but you don't want to see one of those dots on the side. FIP, feline infectious peritonitis. It's fatal in at least 95% of cases. There is no cure or reliable vaccine. It's caused by a type of coronavirus that attacks the intestinal wall. They can survive 3 to 7 weeks in the environment. It is spread by cat-to-cat contact, feces, and possibly across the placenta. Also runs rampant in overcrowded catteries and shelter situations. Kittens, FELV positive cats, and geriatric cats are most likely to contract it. There are both wet and dry forms. The signs include fever, anorexia, weight loss, and lethargy. The wet form has an accumulation of abdominal fluid, which you can see in this poor cat. Ringworm. It is a fungus, not an actual worm. It is extremely contagious. It's contracted by direct contact or touching contaminated objects and surfaces. Spores can remain on surfaces for 18 months. It is killed with bleach or antifungal solution in water, and it's zoonotic, meaning we can get it, and we can give it to animals. Our bigs can get it, especially tigers. The best cure is sulfur dips. This takes weeks, and we cannot dip a tiger or any of our other cats. So if you think you might have ringworm, you tell somebody you need to cover it, and you probably will not be able to be around the animals for a little bit. Prevention, it is in the environment, so sometimes you can't do anything about it. An animal with a weakened immune system could contract it, and it could be, we've had perfectly healthy litter of kittens, but one might be kind of puny. That one kitten will wind up with ringworm. We've had that happen before. Animals infected with ringworm have to be handled with gloves and gowns and kept in isolation. Infected animals must have clear DTM fungal tests. The Humane Society of Tampa Bay requires 3, so that's about 6 weeks of sulfur baths. Most shelters will euthanize infected animals because it's so contagious, and this is why there's a strict quarantine for that. Ear mites. These are 8-legged parasites that live in the ears. It's very contagious through casual contact. Symptoms include scratching, head shaking, helicopter ears, odor, coffee ground appearance in the ears. This discharge is poop. That's really gross. They feed on the wax in the ears. Treatment includes prescription ear drops and cleaning, and one of the houses recently had to go through that. Scabies or mange. It's more common in dogs, but cat with compromised immune systems can get it and are more susceptible. It's diagnosed by a skin scraping. It's treated with baths and dips, and it is very contagious. Fleas. Fleas are relentless here in Florida. They can cause tapeworms, skin irritation, and flea bite anemia. Flea bite anemia can kill kittens, so that's why it's very important that you look your kittens over for fleas, comb them out, and make sure that they don't have them, and that you report it if your house seems to be infested with fleas. Young kittens need to be flea combed and bathed. Older kittens and cats can have topical treatment, and they tend to accumulate at the base of tail and face and the abdomen. So if you're looking for it or you think your kitten might have fleas, that's where you're most likely to find them. Can also leave flea dirt, which is flea poop. And that'll accumulate on them as well. And if it gets wet, it turns red. And if you also comb the kittens, sometimes nasty little things will come out on the comb. Other parasites, roundworm. Most cats and kittens get them at some point. Kittens can get them through mother's milk. It's also contracted by ingesting mice or other small animals. It's prevented by worming medication, which is why our littles and bigs all get that, because our bigs and exotics love to hunt. People can get them, but we are not natural hosts. Because of this, they often migrate to the eyes, and 7 in 10 cases go blind. Other parasites are hookworms, whipworms, and coccidia. They're not as common as roundworm. These are all diagnosed by fecal sample, and all of these can be prevented by deworming. People can get these, so keep the litter boxes clean, and please, for the love of God, wash your hands after you've cleaned the litter box. Diarrhea. Diarrhea can be caused by parasites, stress, bacterial infections, diet change, improper diet, or underlying health issues. If it's left untreated, it can kill kittens via dehydration. And so that's one thing I look for when I'm looking at your charting. Is the kitten losing weight? Up. Okay, let's look at the poop. It's treated by medication, and it can help deworming, and keeping the area clean as possible can help prevent it. Are you unsure if it's diarrhea? Check the poop chart. And number one there, the first one, score 1, is constipation, so that needs my attention, and 6 and 7 as well. If it's a one-time occurrence, I'm not too worried about it. But if it's several times over and the kitten starts losing weight, then I need to know about that, because I might need to administer fluids, definitely get them on some kind of medication. Fading kitten syndrome. This is basically failure to thrive. It mainly affects kittens less than 2 weeks, but it can happen up to 12 weeks. They often don't develop correctly. Kittens with fading kitten syndrome, often their eyes don't open at normal time. I had a little foster kitten. It was one of my very first fosters. The kitten was almost 3 weeks old and still had not opened his eyes. And he hadn't grown very much, and he did pass away, but that's a good example of that. The kitten appears normal at first, then decreases appetite, activity, and becomes weak, low heart rate, body temperature drops very quick. When I get one of those dreaded calls in the middle of the night, it'll often be that a mom has kicked the kitten off, it's very cold, and it has dropped weight. That's classic FKS. Usually a genetic problem, or it's acquired in utero, but can be virus or bacterial. Prognosis is guarded, and they usually fade very quickly. There is usually nothing that can be done for them. And unfortunately, it usually always happens in the middle of the night where you can't get to a veterinarian. So why is documentation important for the interns? I don't see the kittens every day, so I rely on your notations. Gaining weight, eating, urinating, and defecating, getting any medications needed, I need to know all of that. If inconsistencies are noticed, I first ask you for the details, and then I check the kitten. From there, I decide if the kitten needs to be taken in for medical attention. Immediate charting and quick attention to any of these abnormalities saves these lives. So that's how important it is. Never hesitate to contact me if there's an emergency. I don't care what time.
That's why you're Kitten Karma.
If I can't be reached, you can contact MC or Catherine, and I will usually notify you in advance if I'm not going to be available. What is an emergency? An emergency would be a bite wound by mom, falling, dropped, or shut in the cage door, double dosing medication, witnessing foreign body ingestion, symptoms like not wanting to eat or play, pale gums, or a seizure. Kitten stuck in cage wires. Yes, this has happened. We had a kitten tried to go through a cage wire, got its neck cut. We had to call Gail. She came with wire cutters and had to cut the kitten out. If you think it's an emergency, please call. I'd rather be contacted and it be nothing than something life-threatening and lose the kitten. Humane Society medicine and versus private practice. I just want to educate everybody because Humane Society medicine's a little bit different than what you'd do at a private veterinary clinic. I don't really like the term, but it's usually called herd medicine, and that deals with the diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of diseases in a group of animals. And private practice focuses on an individual animal. So why euthanize? Because of disease spreads, resources must be saved for the most adoptable animals, and limited quarantine space. Quarantined and isolated animals are not properly socialized, and I think a slide slipped around somewhere here. But basically, Humane Society medicine, they have to do what's best for the group. of animals and stop disease that might happen and infect an entire group. So unfortunately, that does include euthanasia in some cases. And again, they have to save their resources for the most adoptable animals. Back to quarantine and isolated animals are not properly socialized. Some of you remember a kitten named Elfie. She was adorable. We had her from a couple-day-old bottle baby, so the interns worked very hard with her. Unfortunately, when it was time for her SNAP test, it came up positive. So at the time, it was Christmas season, so we didn't have a lot of kittens. The Humane Society said, let's retest her in a couple weeks. Test came up positive. Well, kittens can shed that after 6 months. So the Humane Society said, if you're willing to take her for the 6 months, you've got the room. We don't have a lot of kittens. And we had an excellent intern. Her name was Jo. She was a level 5, and she knew what the consequences would be if she still came up positive. She agreed to take care of her for the 6 months. And at 6 months, we did the test. Hallelujah, it was negative. But this kitten lived in quarantine and isolation for her whole life. What do you think happened? She was not socialized. We took her to Kitten Cabana. Volunteers went in and tried to work with her. We thought, okay, she's doing better. We took her to the Humane Society. She literally tried to attack potential adopters. So, Catherine now owns Elfie because they said she was either going to have to go as a barn cat or be adopted by a volunteer staff. Catherine also has a lot of bite and scratch wounds on her arms and hands because Elfie is that unpredictable. So there really is a reason that Humane Society's FIV and FELV positive kittens are euthanized at most Humane Societies. They simply don't have the quarantine space. They can't hold something for 6 months. They can't really adopt that out to the public with the amount of shelter animal or with the amount of stray animals needing homes. There's too many healthy ones out there for them to adopt a sick one. And then you get them unsocialized. The other thing is because she was so unsociable, they cannot have a bite risk. If she'd have bitten the potential adopter, she'd have had to have been tested for rabies, and that's euthanasia. So there really is a reason the Humane Societies have to do that, even though it's not necessarily pleasant. Shelters have one very big thing in common with Big Cat Rescue. What do you think that is?
Volunteers.
Pardon me?
Volunteers.
That's a good one. That wasn't what I was looking for. What?
New breeding.
That is one thing. So, one huge thing they have in common with Big Cat Rescue is they would like to not have to exist. But as long as there is overpopulation of animals and breeding, they're going to have to. So there are several types of shelters, but first some sad but true numbers. And I want to talk a little bit about, I've heard some troubling things being said about shelters from volunteers, people over the internet. I've heard some things said like shelter people don't care. Vanessa gave an awesome talk a couple months ago about sanctuaries versus zoo, and she said something so awesome I'm going to steal it. She said, please don't hate the workers. Most of them are there because they love animals and they want to make a difference. But sometimes, they all can't be saved. Other things have been said that they want to kill everything that is not perfect. My work as a shelter, as somebody who has had to assist with that and be on the giving end of that needle, I can assure you we do not want to kill everything that is not perfect. And the 20th euthanasia is not any easier than the first, I guarantee you. So, some of the sad but true numbers, there are approximately 70 million strays in the U.S. This is dogs and cats. There are an estimated 14,000 shelters and rescue groups. approximately 6 to 8 million enter shelters annually. Approximately 1.5 million are euthanized, and unfortunately we cannot save them all. I'll talk about it a little bit later. There are shelters that try to save everything. Probably nobody in this room more than Carol would like to take every single exotic animal that she gets a call for, but it's not the responsible decision. We've got to take care of what we have. We have to know we can take care of what we're going to take in. Top reasons for pets going to shelters. I did interview Pam Backer, the operations manager at the Humane Society of Tampa Bay. She said the first one is owner irresponsibility. You know, they don't spay and neuter their pets. They let them get out and don't come after them. They don't microchip them. Lack of training. They get a puppy and it's supposed to just know what to do on its own. They get a kitten, it's automatically supposed to know how to use the litter box, even though it's been separated from its mom at a very early age. Declawed cats that bite and house soil. Not everyone that brings an animal to the shelter wants to give them up. There's economic reasons, job and home loss. Sometimes people lose their homes. They have to live with relatives that don't want the animals. They might have to live in their car or not have a home at all, or go to an apartment that won't allow the pets. Illness or death of an owner. How many of you have plans for your pets if something happens to you? I'm guilty. I don't. But something could happen to any of us tomorrow. And this is kind of an unpopular subject, but I feel like it needs to be talked about because there are advantages and disadvantages to both. There are the type of shelters that euthanize for space. The disadvantages, there's a high kill rate. Usually they do the least adoptable ones first. Not always, sometimes it's just strictly time-based. The advantage is they can always take in an animal. Some of the shelters, which is what Humane Society of Tampa Bay does, they euthanize for illness and behavior only. The advantage is there's a good chance an animal will not be euthanized that goes to that shelter. The euthanasia is only done on animals with chronic or incurable diseases or aggressive and otherwise unadoptable behavior, and they do behavior evaluations at the Humane Society of Tampa Bay. The disadvantage is when they are full, they have to turn away animals. So then what is that person going to do? They've been to several shelters, they've all turned them away because they're full. Where did they go? Some people dump them, some people give them maybe to undesirable homes. Some people keep them when they really don't want to keep them, so they don't take proper care of them. Then there are the kind that will not euthanize anything. Awesome! They'll take everything. The advantage is the animal will not be euthanized or turned away. The disadvantage is many of these wind up being shut down due to overcrowding, filthy conditions, and disease. The good intention is there. They want to save everything, but they're starting to get crowded, so let's just stack these carriers all in a corner here and these carriers all in a corner here, and well, we don't really have the money to feed them. Now the volunteers are starting to get a little bit burned out, and so we start losing volunteers, and euthanasia stinks, but living in a filthy crate isn't a life for an animal either. And a lot of times these cats catch FIP. There was one I fostered for in Central Oregon. It took 4 years to get them shut down because that's how busy the USDA is. But every single one of those cats had ringworm. So it's not a good existence for those animals. We understand the heart behind it, but it just isn't a practical thing to try to do. What can we do to help? So spay and neuter your pets. Encourage your friends to spay and neuter your pets. Adopt and don't shop. It's probably going to get some breeders mad at me that might be listening. If you really want a purebred, there are rescues that carry them. If you do searches, they're out there. A lot of the traits of purebreds are the result of inbreeding. And so they have issues just like the white tigers and other animals. And so pretty soon the owners don't want them. They're like, I didn't know they were going to have this health problem. I didn't know I was going to have them on a special diet, take them to the vet time after time again. So they are out there. Train your animals. Take that time to get them to a trainer. There's all kinds of websites and resources for you. Please don't declaw your cats. The first thing they're going to do is start biting. And then a lot of times they start house soiling. Commit to seeing your animals through health and behavior challenges. You know, I'll just give me as an example, I've got a little hairless cat that I adopted. She had some potty issues. She wouldn't use the litter box. So I have potty pads all over the place. Well, the vet said, I think she's got a rare intestinal condition. So we got her on a special diet, and it took several months. Now we've got normal poop, and she is starting to use the potty box, and the vet told me, she said, thank you. She goes, a lot of people wouldn't be willing to work with their animals this long. But don't give up. Commit to seeing them through whatever challenges they may have. Plan for emergencies like hurricanes. Include your pets in your will. Volunteer for a shelter or rescue. Be a foster caregiver. That is huge. Fostering is, we take the cats that the shelters can't keep because we can't have a mom and babies there. The babies don't have any immune system. Bottle feeder, same thing, and shelter staff and volunteers don't have time, so fostering is huge. Some statistics we have here, we took on our first foster kitten on April 5th, 2013. Since then, we have taken in 659 cats and kittens.
Woohoo!
Of them, 65 have passed away or were humanely euthanized. The rest have been adopted or are currently in our program. That is a 9.9% mortality rate, which is very small. So everyone in here, you interns that have raised them, the volunteers that have helped socialize them, and you folks out there in internet land who have sent donations and
She's talking to you guys.
yes, and toys and things for these kittens. I want you to give yourselves a big hand. I'm very proud of this program. So, thank you and good job, everyone. Any questions?
Well, everybody's saying, great job, whoopee, flying should be outlawed. All of my cats are rescues, I'm a foster. Anybody got questions on Facebook?
Maya.
So what are the specific things they look for in the behavior evaluation? Like how?
So mainly aggression. A lot of animals get turned in, dogs especially, for submissive peeing. And yeah, those are the main things. Rebecca.
You mentioned with panleukopenia that regular household cleaners don't kill it.
Mm-hmm.
So I use Excel, like a chemical that they use in shelters. Would that kill it, do you think?
So I would look it up before assuming that. I haven't heard of that one. The shelter uses one that just smells awful, but it kills the panleuk.
Okay.
When you talk about the deadlier diseases, is it the mortality rate in kittens, or can some of those be contracted later in the cat's life?
It can be later, yeah.
Okay.
Kittens are the most at risk, or geriatric.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, everybody.